of Arts, Science, and Technology here based in Botswana, Professor Chedi Kiravu. A huge round of applause for Prof as he will be introducing his panelists. Thank you. As the Prof settles down, panelists who are part of this panel, he will call you, so kindly do get ready to come onto the stage and discuss creating a conducive environment for sustainable energy development within the Sadc region. Over to you, Prof.
Hello. Good morning to you all. It's still good morning. I'd like to call to the stage my distinguished members of this panel. Mr. Petrus Johannes, the Chief Executive Officer at Technical Regulations Electricity Control Board of Namibia, please, to the stage. Mr. Skumbuzo Sabeze, the Chief Executive Officer, Isera Eswatini. Mr. Pelaelo Komoso, the Chief Operations Officer, Bera, Botswana. Mr. Brian Tahinduka, Head of Energy Infrastructure and Mining, Africa Region, Standard Bank Group. And lastly, Mr. Farai Kanonda, Regional Operations Manager, Energy and Infrastructure, AFDB. Let's give them a round of applause as they walk to the stage. Well, one of what I'm not so proud of is when I look at my members in this list, I suddenly find that I'm missing a woman. So this is not quite happy for me because those of you who know us at the New Era College of Arts, Science and Technology can testify that we are strong proponents of the cause of women in engineering. As a matter of fact, we set aside a week every year dedicated to celebrating women in engineering. So I'm not quite happy not to see a lady here. But our session today is a pivotal session. It's a continuation of the things we've been discussing. It's about the enabling environment. It's a topic that will stay with us for quite some time. I wish to encourage the audience, though, to keep on bringing the issues that are important to this debate, the nagging issues that you wish to talk to somebody about, but that you can now only talk here because here is an accumulation of people who are in the decision-making processes for the region, and so you have a chance to articulate what you really want to see happen. I like to take the word from Jonathan yesterday, where he said, we are talking more than implementing. So I think let's bring those ideas to implementation stage. So today's session, we are going to explore the critical elements that are necessary to foster a thriving, sustainable energy landscape within the Sadc region. To this end, and in this session, we will explore the essential policy and regulatory frameworks that support innovative renewable energy investments, the role of regulatory bodies within Sadc in driving progress, the diverse financial mechanisms, the current investment climate to identify barriers and opportunities for funding, challenges of infrastructure, as you have heard before. We'll also address issues around capacity building and then highlight the importance of the PPPs in our endeavors. We clearly have a lot to talk about, so I'll manage this session by asking our panelists to stick to a minimum of at most 3 minutes. And so if you see my right hand go up, take right to mean red, you have to stop. With that said, I'd like to pose the first question to Mr. Petras Johannes. Namibia's ECB is promoting a renewable energy future by adopting policies that support solar and wind energy integration. However, you definitely face significant hurdles. Now, given your experiences in Namibia, what single thing, what roles do smart grid technologies and storage solutions play in Namibians' plans for renewable energy grid integration? And what regulatory hurdles need to be addressed to achieve this?
Thank you very much, Prof, for the question, and a good afternoon to the audience. Maybe just a bit of corrections in terms of my title. I'm not the executive officer of ECB. I'm the executive responsible for technical regulation. Coming back to your question, Prof, and the audience, Namibia, as far as renewable energy is concerned, we have started this journey in 2017, and we have seen a tremendous adoption of renewable energy that is currently sitting at 76% of our installed capacity since 2017 to date. So throughout the years, as the adoption was ongoing, it became very imminent that the grid that we had yesterday is not capable of adopting high penetration of renewable energy without any modification. And for us as a regulator, together with the industry over the years, we have noted that smart grid and battery storage are critical in managing supply and demand due to the intermittence nature that was brought about by renewable energy adoption. So it is on that note that we have to relook at our regulatory frameworks and policies to make sure that these technologies can be adopted. Now, coming back to your questions of what regulatory hurdles that we have experienced, on the policy levels, if we have to look at the issue of battery storage, for instance, we came to the realization that our existing legal framework does not make provision for licensing battery storage. So it is something that we have to do. We needed to relook at that legal instrument and make the necessary changes to promote this technology. In terms of policies, so we needed to relook at our grid codes to respond to these technologies, and I think we are one of the few countries that have got grid codes that are aligned to the Sadc regional grid code. And it is in those grid codes that we made provision for smart grid adoption. In terms of what has been happening in our grid, as I indicated, we have just reviewed the grid code. We have seen the market evolving by itself, where we see smart grid adoption by licensees. We have seen licensee implementing SCADA system to ensure communication between customers. We have seen embedded generation, and it becomes important that transmission companies and distributors need to understand what is happening behind the meters. So there is a move to introduce advanced metering infrastructures and smart meters to ensure communication. An introduction of intelligent electronic devices in the transmission and distribution companies is also something that we have seen. So as a country, I think as a regulator, by reviewing our policies and framework, we have created that conducive environment. And with what is happening, we are confident that the industry is moving in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. We'll move on to the next question. This question goes to Mr. Skumbuzo Sabeze, the Chief Executive Officer at Esira Eswatini. Eswatini is pushing for energy diversification. What regulatory frameworks has Esira established to promote renewable energy projects, and how do they ensure the stability of Eswatini's electricity grid amidst increased integration of renewable energy?
Thank you, Prof, and good afternoon, audience, and all protocols observed. I think this is a straightforward question. I think first and foremost, Prof, maybe we need to mention that we're one of the few countries which do not generate coal. I think most of our power, much as it is imported from Mozambique largely and ESCOM, we rely on that. But all national generation capacity is renewable. We've aggressively assumed, as you correctly point out, that we are obviously diversifying our energy mix, but certainly I think most of what is coming through is going to be renewables, amounting to about 208 megawatts. Nonetheless, I think the point is, what is the position of the regulator in terms of preparing regulatory frameworks to deal with these new challenges? Of course, I think to run at a fast pace, my colleague has already highlighted that one of the elements was the grid code. We needed to update that and align it with the Sadc grid code. We've also done something similar to that. We've also developed market guidelines just to include customer contestability, so that we are able to open access to other markets, and that framework is actually being completed as well. In terms of grid stability, ESCOM remains the national control center, largely for Eswatini, because they have the most significant generators. However, we've developed an energy framework, an energy storage regulatory framework to address those challenges. It's something we've done recently as well. We have, of course, I think, to allow transmission of power. I think a lot has been said earlier in terms of wheeling frameworks and ensuring that those wheeling frameworks are also standardized with the Sadc wheeling framework. That is what we have actually done to do. In most cases, we've utilized the same consultants who have done work for Sadc. This also helps to make sure that you conform to the region, because I think one of the biggest challenges we have in harmonizing the regions, I think the last speaker was actually saying the difficulty with investors is that you come to one region, you find you have a whole host of different regulations, and they are very dissimilar to the next country within Sadc. So I think by and large we've tried to conform to the requirements of Sadc. And finally, I think we are participating in the Africa Mini Grid program, just to make sure that those areas that are not covered also have power supply. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That was brief, and I appreciate the fact that you are striving to standardize your practices, to comply with what else is happening and is obtaining within the Sadc region. I think that's a good first step towards cooperation and collaboration in this sustainable energy effort. My next question will go to Mr. Pelailo Komoso of Bera, Botswana, and it's about policy reforms. And I'm asking Mr. Komoso this: what policy reforms are currently being considered by Bera to encourage greater investment in renewable energy sources, and how can these reforms be aligned with regional Sadc efforts? Can I rephrase it?
Hello? Hello? Okay. No, thank you, Professor Kiravu. I think maybe I would say these are policy instruments that we have done, and I'll also talk about some which we are working on. I think as a lot of speakers have said, we operate within a region, and harmonization is one of the big things that we have to take care of when we do whatever we need to do, so that it's easier for investors to come to our region. One of the areas that we worked very closely with our Association of Regulators is on the grid codes. That was earlier mentioned, the regional grid codes. And thereafter, we developed our grid codes, which were aligned to the regional one. When we gave out the terms of reference, we were saying that they should be aligned to that. But also, the other driving force was that we wanted to have an instrument that can be controlled locally to suit local conditions and be easy for adjustments. Locally here also what we've done is that out of the 2008 policy change that generation is being opened, we took a position as the regulator to say we'll give private sector, those that are interested to produce power here and export, to have that opportunity. So we introduced the program for IPPs for export. We relaxed some of the requirements like IPPs. We said that because apparently in terms of them engaging any other partners in the other countries, the issue was, are you licensed the way you are? But then we said, we took a position to say, let's break the chicken and egg thing. We'll license you, you will go out there and look out for firm commitments. And we'll also facilitate you in whatever needs to be facilitated. Like, as you would know, they will need access to the transmission system. We have had challenges with that. As has been mentioned by many speakers here, there is a constraint in our transmission systems. We need the interconnectors to come, but they are not coming as fast as we could. And therefore, you then find in some of these the connection agreements, they've got restrictive conditions, which we are not happy with, but we hope that working as a region will get our interconnectors in place and then allow these private investors to move. So far, I think we have licensed about 5, total capacity of about 1,000 megawatts. This is under the IPPs for export. Then we have also, I think one thing just to bring this in context is that BERA is maybe 7 or so years, while some of our colleagues here are more than 20 years old. So we are sort of like at the tail end, but although having said that is that we have used our colleagues to benchmark a lot of things to try to be on the path of harmonization. So we also brought in the program, the rooftop solar program. I think in other countries it's called the net metering. Essentially, we were saying that in this energy transition, let other people who are down the scale, your domestics, your commercial industry, to come into the energy revolution that we are experiencing. And I think as mentioned earlier on, we currently have about 36 megawatts approved. 15 is actually working. We have had issues, or we're having the issues, as you would know, dispatchability. I think also on our side, I think we have not given good pricing signals so that the development of this program can be as valuable as it should. When I say that, I mean that, as you all know, the load profile for the Southern Africa is after 5 or 6 in the evening, but during that time, such a program's contribution would have disappeared. But I think with maybe some price signals, you could encourage a private sector to come into those areas. I think coupled with that,
Mr. Komoso, I'll give you another chance.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
Thank you so much. He's talked about the alignment of codes, the inclusion of IPPs and the challenges in the transmission facilities and structures of Botswana, BPC. But then those are good things that others can also see. I think it's important to highlight these things. I'd just like to move on to the next question. I'll give you another round of questioning for each one of you, so you'll have time to complement what you just said. The question goes to Brian Tahinduka Brian Tahinduka is head of Energy Infrastructure and Mining, Africa Region, Standard Bank Group. So I'd like to ask him about this, that given the diverse regulatory landscapes across SADC countries, what specific policy reforms and financial strategies would you recommend harmonizing renewable energy regulations and promoting cross-border investment in the region? Mr. Tahinduka, please. 3 minutes.
Thank you so much, Doc. Very good afternoon, good morning. So I'll just take half a minute to talk about Standard Bank. We are headquartered in Johannesburg. We are operational in Sadc, East Africa, and in West Africa we cover Nigeria, Ghana, and Cote d'Ivoire, just to set the scene. And we've been in this energy space for a long time, funding both large utility projects and also the smaller projects. So when you talk about policy and harmonization, from a financial institution perspective, it's more on aligning ourselves to key policy regulatory environment that attract investment. As a bank, we do invest into government utility projects that cover generation, transmission, and distribution. And we do this through collaboration and partnerships with multiple players. You own a project, you have an EPC, you have a financier, and other facets that come in to support bankability of the project. So what we do is we ensure everyone is aligned, the process in place do actually play a role to make sure the transaction is bankable. Some of the policies we look at are policies covering price, covering technology, covering manufacturing, IoT or mobile money space. The unbundling policies, we're seeing, they spoke about how there's going to be unbundling around generation, distribution, and transmission. We're seeing that already happening, and that decentralizes the ownership on the operation in the space. Then also you have the net metering and wheeling policy. It's coming in to attract a lot of investment and encourage investment in the market. Also, we don't want to forget about the rural electrification policy, how we're promoting the last mile connection, promoting the solar pay-go to cover as much households and to bring them online, looking at energy efficiencies, and also looking at the water, electricity, and agriculture nexus. Now, when it comes to bankability of deals, when a project comes on our table and we're looking at how best we can do financing, there is, at a country level, we look around the policy around your tariffs. We look at policies on the likes of wheeling policy. We look at the take-or-pay, or what we call deemed energy. And we look at also the tax incentives, subsidies to attract investment, And those also guide on how we do the whole financial model to make sure there is the breakdown does make financial sense. Then also now we're seeing new inventions in the sector, like the CBAM, the carbon border adjustment mechanism from the European market. And most of the Sadc countries are exporting product into Europe. What we're doing is supporting our customers that are exporting into Europe to ensure that they solve for their Scope 2 emissions for readiness into that export market. Thank you, Doc.
Thank you. That was good. Within our time. So the next question will go to Mr. Farai Kanonda. Mr. Farai Kanonda is the Regional Operations Manager, Energy and Infrastructure at the AFDB. The question to you, sir, is this: that what innovative financial mechanisms or instruments is the African Development Bank currently exploring or deploying to address barriers to financing renewable energy projects in the Sadc region?
Good morning, colleagues. Good morning, and thank you very much, moderator. There are a number of instruments that the bank uses and pursues in the financing of various projects. Perhaps I could start with talking about risk guarantees, such as the partial risk guarantee and the credit risk guarantees, which are really meant to improve the bankability of the transaction, both from an investor and a bank perspective. So we have that class of risk guarantees. We can also talk of blended finance instruments, or a blended finance approach to a transaction, which basically where we are bringing in commercial complemented by concessional resources. And obviously the end result is you get a facility which is not so expensive, if I can put it that way, at the end of the day. We have project preparation facilities in the bank, and we have quite a number of windows that support from a project preparation perspective. Examples being our NEPAD IPPF facility. We have a SEFA window that assists with project preparation, and quite a host of other instruments that one can pursue. I think also in trying to manage foreign exchange risk, the bank also goes for local currency financing, where in a number of jurisdictions, we are actually able to lend in the local currency. This takes away the foreign currency risks on transactions. And we are able to do this in, like I said, in a number of countries. We can also talk of climate finance mechanisms, where the bank, through its partnerships, we are able to leverage and bring into transactions facilities such as the Green Climate Fund and the Climate Investment Funds. I think over the years we have disbursed quite a significant amount towards the climate investment funds, towards the qualifying countries. One can also look at the Green Climate Fund as, I think we have transactions. A good example would be the Scaling Solar Program in Zambia, where we have deployed this instrument. We also have instruments specifically targeting mini-grid and off-grid financing through our Green Mini-Grid Market Development Program and through our SEFA Sustainable Energy Fund for Africa off-grid windows. So these are very special and targeted instruments that ensure that we are able to make a contribution in the hard-to-finance sectors, such as the mini-grids. I think we can also talk of green bonds that the bank issues, and these enable the participation of sustainable development investors, which is a different class of investors, probably not part of the mainstream, but through green bonds, they are then able to participate, and the bank has issued these for a number of transactions. I think in terms of innovation, there is a lot of discussion and experimentation around sustainability-linked bonds. where the cost of financing is really then becomes dependent on the achievement of the sustainable indicators that are agreed to. And that is something that is still going through what I might want to call a pilot phase. We also have results-based financing. I think it's a new way of doing things where disbursements against a given, disbursements on a program are provided against achievement of agreed targets. For example, it might be connections. So once certain number of connections is reached, then a disbursement is then provided. This allows that the financing that we provide is actually results-based. It's not just, you are financing against a real asset or a real outcome that has been achieved. Perhaps lastly, let me just briefly talk about the latest platform that we have developed together with the World Bank, which is the Mission 300. So we are working very closely with the World Bank and other partners such as GEAP, Sustainable Energy for All, and Rockefeller Foundation. The whole idea is to electrify up to 300 million people by 2030. Now, the platform, the main benefit is that we will be able to leverage significant amounts of capital to go towards the realization of the various investment projects in various countries. 12 countries have signed up to the first cohort, and the idea is we develop additional, or rather we work with countries to develop further energy compacts. Now, this is meant to target private sector participation as one of the pillars. It's meant to look at rehabilitation and construction of new infrastructure. It's meant to encourage distributed renewable energy development, increased regional integration, which is key, and of course ensuring that we're viable utilities on the continent. I think the collaboration it brings, the opportunity to engage the private sector, development partners, international finance institutions, ensures that there is a lot of support against this program. So this is a platform that we are really excited about, and we think that it will facilitate the mobilization of clearly very needed capital across the sector.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll pause there.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Kanonda. While you have the mic, let me just ask you your second question. We'll go. This is the second round now. What then are the innovative financial mechanism or instruments? What innovative financial mechanisms or instruments does the African development currently explore to deploy and address the financial barriers to renewable energy?
Moderator, let me assist you. I think that's what I've just responded to.
Yes.
Yeah, so perhaps if I'm to go again...
You'll bank your time. Oh, No, it's fine. We'll take the next person.
Okay.
Unless you have anything to add to...
No, in terms of innovative financial instruments, I have nothing further to add here.
Right.
Yeah.
But do you have anything to add to that you haven't covered? Just to make use of your time. You have 2 minutes. Okay. Mr. Kanonda, you're fine?
I'm okay, thank you.
Thank you. No, I'll go to the next question. The next question will now go to Mr. Johannes. Mr. Johannes, from your experience in Namibia, what lessons can the Sadc region learn about balancing energy access and affordability while promoting a transition to renewable energy?
Thank you very much, Prof, for that question. I think the issue of access and affordability is a challenge that we are all battling with as a region. But Namibia being one of the countries that have reached cost-reflective tariff in 2019, we want to make sure that we retain this status, but at the same time, we also want to make sure that we connect the unconnected and they should be able to afford electricity whenever they are connected. So I must say how we are addressing the balance. I must say the renewable energy adoption is policy driven. We have got a national policy on energy that set targets that we must reach 80% of renewable by 2028. We also needed to do some market reforms. We have opened up the market to the private sector, and this is on the generation side. And the idea here is actually to make sure that you see government and private sector participate in achieving that target. One of the things as far as transitioning is concerned, our flagship project on net metering have seen 70 megawatt of renewable added to the grid. On the issue of affordability, as I've indicated, we have reached cost-reflective tariff, but how we have been managing affordability, this is usually done within the licensee, where our tariff methodology allows for licensees to have got social tariff that is targeted to your pensioners and the vulnerable groups. We have also tried to pilot a support tariff with a government subsidy, but that was seen as unsustainable, and we want to make sure that we'll continue refining our tariff methodology to address that. On access, as a country, we are at 60% as of last year. 12% of that is off-grid connections. And what we have done is actually to make sure that we develop off-grid regulations, because Namibia is quite dispersed, and we will not be able to connect everybody with a grid. So as a regulator, we initiated the project of developing off-grid regulation, and the idea is to also see how we can actually connect the unconnected. A lot of work has gone in. We have costed how much it will cost us, a combination of grid connection and off-grid. So we are looking at $1.3 billion US. So it's a lot of money, but I think in terms of implementation also, we are also considering an electrification agency to assist the distributor to make sure everybody is connected. So all in all, so we are trying to balance this within the framework of our policy to make sure that we transition and customers are able to afford electricity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Now, we'll move on to a follow-up question to Mr. Sabeze. Mr. Sabeze, we're going to ask, what are some of the key financial barriers that Eswatini faces in attracting private investment for renewable energy projects, and how can the Sadc region work together to overcome these challenges?
Thank you, Prof. Once again, I think maybe one that really truly stands out for us, because just to give context, we are procuring these 6 or 7 projects simultaneously on renewables, and they require significant funding. And generally, the challenge that you first come across is that the ability of the utility, who largely is the off-taker, if you look at their balance sheet, they may not be able to handle the requisite exposure. And so what then happens is you also have to deal with a second issue. The secondary issue is your rand-dollar exchange rate. You find that lenders will, first of all, float currency or investments in dollars, and yet you'll be exposed to the exchange rate. So you need to be very careful, therefore, in structuring your RFPs and your RFQs to make sure that you are not exposed to that risk. So those were the challenges we actually initially faced, but we eventually settled for the rand. Of course, I think you'd imagine that the risk would then be embedded somewhere there. And secondly, or thirdly, really, I think what you often find is that there is an absence of certain clear legal provisions I think in our case, we have the National Procurement Act and an Electricity Procurement Act. We are one of the few regulators, if I may say, in the region where we are entrusted with the responsibility of procuring new generation capacity in consultation with the ministry, unlike the situation in South Africa. So the regulator has this so perceived conflict of interest in that they are procurers of new generation capacity as well. But I think to get back to your question, I think finally what you actually realize is how you actually get to financial close. What do the lenders say? What do they point out? What do they indicate as challenges? I think from our experience, we found that most of these lenders would often, if not always, demand that a sovereign guarantee be provided or a termination guarantee be provided. And to get to that, I think you need a commitment from your Ministry of Finance, and you need a commitment from your Ministry of Natural Resources and all the players in the country. And that does not necessarily come quick and come easy. I think those are the expectations. I think my suggestion, from our experience, is that perhaps we need a forum where lenders, including Sadc, could actually come together and develop this framework for Sadc on how best lenders could find the region ideal. I think one is yet to see a manual or a simple framework that would sort of guide investors or lenders on how best to invest on renewables in the region. I think that would be my contribution. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that last suggestion was really innovative, to have the lenders come together to a forum to formulate a common framework that would be applicable to the Sadc region. That's a good suggestion. Thank you, sir, for that. The next question will go to Mr. Komoso of Bera. Mr. Komoso, we're going to ask, with the rise of smart grid technologies like IoT and AI, how is Botswana addressing the regulatory challenges associated with integrating these technologies into the national grid while maintaining grid stability and security? Mr. Komoso.
Hello.
3 minutes.
Okay. Yeah. No, thank you. I think the issue really is that smart grids technology is with us. Is something that brings issues of job losses, issues of security, but we have to embrace technology to take advantage of it because that is something that is always going to be there. The other thing is that when you look at the electricity sector, I think we are moving to where we were some couple of years, whereby generation was at distribution. And you know, for you to operate a power system, you need visibility. But now when you need visibility at distribution level, that needs a lot of infrastructure that will give you that visibility for control or for monitoring or for pricing. We are aware that the electricity market structure that we are going to is where the other nations are, where pricing is dynamic, is dependent on the time, is dependent on the actual time, actual prices that are there. So with all that, we have to embrace these technologies. And yes, we are aware of that. The utility is working on scoping that. It's still at preliminary stage. But the things that we see are the costs. I think even the last time when we had a discussion, pilot, about 50 million. Now the issue that comes at the bottom of this is that somebody has to pay for that, and it's the customers. So what we need to be sensitive to is that there should be real benefits about these technologies. It should not be the features of the technologies, but the real benefits that do accrue to the customers. And for us, currently what we implement is that when we review the tariffs, we always put that factor, productivity improvement, because we assume that year in, year out, there should be productive improvement due to interventions of technology. So we put a factor of about 2 to 3% when we review our debt. So at the regulator as well, we are implementing or working on implementing a licensing management system so that we can work, even the guys when they are out there in the fields, we can continue getting our work, getting through to the offices. But also just to lastly, at the regional level, at RERA, we work with committees. There are committees or subcommittees for electricity, for petroleum and the like. But recently, we have introduced a working committee on IT because we really feel that these issues of IT, artificial intelligence are important. We need to handle them. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for that. The last question in this round will go to Mr. Tahinduka. What role can financial institutions like Standard Bank Group play in fostering innovation and ensuring a balanced approach to encourage private sector participation while maintaining affordability and reliability for the end users?
Thank you so much, Prof. So I'll start with the currency mismatch and alignment. As a financial institution operating in multiple countries, in every jurisdiction we operate in, we have an opportunity to avail local currency funding and create the right mix within the currencies. It could be dollar, euro, or any other currency versus any currency of that market. That's one part. The second piece is on partnerships and collaboration. Right now, there are many programs at the DFI level, at a public level. So you have government and multilateral negotiations and discussions, and these programs need to be implemented at a local level. The target market is within the value chains or ecosystems the banks operate in, and there is a requirement for a financial, an account or banking account required. Whether you are an end user, whether you are an EPC or an OEM, you need at least to have a banking relationship. The conversation is how, as financial institutions, play a role to unlock those programs. And I'll give a simple example. We participated in the World Bank Last Mile Connection programs. We have financed projects around electrification for low voltage, medium, and high voltage lines. Right now, there is a collaboration program we have in the Nigerian market for the mini grids where we supporting unlock capital for EPCs to make sure there is proper funding for mini grid program in Nigeria. So when you talk about Mission 300, what comes to mind is what role can we play as commercial banks or financial institution to make sure that there is implementation of those programs. The other part is on the result-based models or grant models. These are accelerator programs that are supposed to help accelerate adoption of renewable energy. And what we do as a bank is ensure we provide that bridge finance required to ensure that if it's result-based, you can do your procurement and execution of your work, and then you can submit your invoice for payment or your project completion certificate for payment. The last part is on, Doc, it's on technology. What we've done is to take the renewable energy and I would want to call game to another level. We partner with OEMs. These are manufacturers of equipment, whether it is the smaller home systems, whether it is water pumping, whether it is panels, inverters, and battery storage, or bigger utility solutions that are providing, like the Internet of Things, to make it smarter and easier. We do create partnerships and we ensure we enforce quality on equipment and quality on installations to make sure there is longevity on projects that have been implemented in markets so that there is benefit for the customer outside the benefit of an OEM selling its equipment, an EPC installing the project, but we ensure the end user gets the benefit. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kanonda, you want to just complement your earlier?
Thank you, moderator. In fact, I want to also take the opportunity to quickly respond to some of the issues that have been raised, as well as say one or two other issues. I think my colleague from ESERA raised the issue of how difficult it is to have government guarantees on projects, right, or secure government guarantees. And I think that's where the instrument that I spoke about earlier in terms of partial risk guarantees do come in, because it then enables the institutions or the financial institution, or in this case, the bank, to stand behind the utility instead of the government. However, these are short-term solutions. I think the actual solution comes in ensuring that the utilities are viable and they can use their own balance sheets and they can support own transactions, which is one of the pillars of the Mission 300, which I discussed earlier. And that will then take the government out of the equation. I know it's not a short-term solution, but utilities must be striving to be financially viable and therefore be able to support some of these obligations on their own balance sheet. But whilst I'm at that, maybe I can also just point out how how MDBs, how the bank supports IPPs and the government in the process of reaching and agreements and for getting transactions to financial close. We provide technical assistance that covers project preparation, it covers capacity building of the ministries, let's say in terms of procurement, negotiation, managing and even monitoring of the projects. I think under legal support, we have what's called the Africa Legal Support Facility, which does a good job of supporting African governments negotiate the various contracts. We also provide support in terms of policy and regulation, and here development of policy frameworks that are robust, basically robust legal and regulatory frameworks, and standardized contracts. I think it's important. Standardization is critical because it reduces transmission costs of the private sector across jurisdictions and countries. We provide financial instruments. I've already spoken about concessional loans and grants, and even equity investments in some of the projects. One key area where MDBs play a role is in terms of catalytic projects, which serve as a demonstration, as well as piloting projects which showcase innovative projects. And these are areas where we provide support. I think a key area, stakeholder engagement and partnerships, when it comes to, creating multi-stakeholder partnerships between the government, development partners, the civil society, and the private sector. And this helps in terms of, ensuring alignment in terms of the development needs and the way forward within countries. And of course, just the strategic partnerships between the MDBs to facilitate the mobilization of additional resources. I think I would have not done justice if I don't talk of knowledge products and advocacy in terms of how we engage with governments, utilities, obviously to showcase new approaches, and in terms of advocacy, just to make sure that the right kind of things are done. For example, I've just spoken in terms of how do we make sure that utilities become sustainable and are able to shoulder the obligations when it comes to investments and the need for new projects. And obviously, just as a last, in terms of what we do support in terms of monitoring and evaluation, is around obviously the development of performance metrics, which are transparent, which drive transparency, which drive accountability and improvement in terms of how a project performs, and ultimately the associated impact assessment around social, economic, and environmental performance of a project. I think these are key areas where we provide support as financial institutions. And I think lastly, my colleague here just asked about how do commercial banks then come into M300? How do they participate? I think when we were working on 300, we realized that when countries were developing their financing plans, in general, they anticipate or they project that about 60% of their requirements will have to come from the private sector. In terms of public, it's 40%. 60% has to come from the private sector. And this is your IPPs, and they require financing. So I think there is really a lot of opportunities for all kinds of financing to come into projects, for the private sector, for commercial entities, commercial banks, non-traditional forms of financing. I think there is a role and there is a requirement within the energy sector. So I think indeed there is enough space for everyone, if I can put it that way.
Yeah.
Thank you, moderator,
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We just want to give our audience an opportunity to ask questions. I think I like the audience to be bringing these issues to you for an answer. If there's any questions that you have, we'll take a few, and then the closing moments will give each one of yeah, there's a hand there.
Thank you very much. My name is Simone Gers. I'm for the German embassy here in Gaborone, mainly responsible for our cooperation with the Sadc. So I'm looking at all the issues from a regional perspective. And we talked about a lot of the funds that the German government is providing funds for, like the Climate Investment Fund, the Green Climate Funds. We're supporting the CEFA and the African Union's PETA program, also the GET Pro. We have various programs that we are supporting, and individual member states we are supporting with several million euros in the transition to sustainable energy. But looking at it from a regional perspective, going a bit away from the member states, what do you think, if you pinpoint what is the main impediment, in your opinion, that is basically impeding the accelerating of the transition to sustainable energy for the region? Thank you.
I think that the question can be answered by any one of us. Would you want to try and
I'll respond to, I'll give it a bite. So one of the things we've discovered as we traverse most of the countries, it's awareness. There are so many programs happening in different countries from DFIs and governments, but there's limited awareness about these programs. And what we've done is we're taking stock of these projects. We are knocking on different doors of the project owners, and we're looking at how we can actually open them up and accelerate success and also adoption of renewable energy. So I would think that would be the awareness part. The second part is a complete understanding of the framework or the taxonomy of the program, the implementation, the implementing partners, the whole value chain from beginning to the end. There's also that challenge. And then the last one is on the ease potential market and the ease the opportunity market. You could look at energy access and you're trying to solve the energy access challenge where they're talking about 300 million people have no access to energy in Africa. That is the opportunity size or opportunity challenge. But what is the addressable market? If you go into the brief breakdown of the detail on how you can do the implementation and how many people you can reach in a period of time, that would give clarity on how actually you can have success. Doc.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms.
Thank you. I think I could also share, or rather add, that quite a lot of the time we see a conflict between regional and national interests. So in as much as a regional project is beneficial, I think at times countries have a lot of pressure to improve national situation, which then forces them to kind of, you can't have it all. So the choice tends to default towards national interests ahead of the potential regional benefits. So for me, that's one of the big things. Obviously, these projects are not simplified. They're not simple. You have a project, from one country or into multiple other countries. So issues of regulations, I guess, which the likes of RERA and SAP are now trying to work around in terms of how do you align, in terms of the regulatory frameworks, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that becomes, and we have seen it to be an issue. So they become complicated. And of course, I guess in terms of financing challenges, perhaps that can also just be explained by this issue of where do we put our finances. We have so much to do at the national level, and there is a competing requirement to do a regional project. And maybe lastly, it's just an issue of coordination. It becomes a challenge as well. And these are all issues that one needs to pay attention to. I'm not saying you will find all of these on the same project, but I'm just trying to pick across a number of projects what have been the key issues here. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other question? Yes, there's a question there.
Thank you, and good afternoon. My name is Gift Bakumbi. I've got two questions. One goes to Johannes, ECB. You did speak to the key learnings in the case of Namibia, especially on issues of access and affordability. But one would maybe want to understand the key learnings in the sense of technical impediments, especially for the utilities, issues of grid stability, issues of curtailment, and how, or the costs associated with such, and how in Namibia you are able to deal with them. The second question goes to the three regulators sitting in the panel.
Can we just have that answered first?
Okay.
Thank you very much for that question. So, as it pertains to the issue of grid stability, I think the statistics that I have shared in terms of where we are in terms of renewable energy adoption, the 70%, I think that is in terms of installed capacity. But if one have to quantify that in terms of the energy contribution to the entire grid, that works out to about 15%. So if one look at it in that sense, I should indicate in terms of a national utility, which is NamPower, I think we are not yet there where we are feeling the impact of intermittency. But as an industry, we have sort of worked together to sort of identify the penetration level where grid stability will really become a challenge. So we sort of just trying to be proactive in a sense. On the net metering, that is now the embedded generation, maybe on the technical side, I think there has been a lot of engagement within the industry. At the moment, we're limiting end consumers to not install more than the connection from the distributors. And that is actually a technical limit that is being challenged because the argument is also to say, if I install this capacity, it does not mean that, you see, I am exporting into your grid that maximum capacity. So we are busy reviewing the net metering rules, and one of the topical issues is surrounding the issue of limitation on the distribution network. Thank you.
Thank you. There was a question behind there by a lady.
I was not done, Prof.
Oh, sorry.
Yes. Thank you.
Just very...
Thank you. Yeah, I was saying the second question goes to the three regulators in the panel. We often find ourselves in a situation where, as an example, we do not have carbon certificates or renewable energy certificates in our policies or in our frameworks. And yet we do have large customers or large consumers that could perhaps assist us as countries to raise our renewable energy profile. And my question is, how do we ensure that these entities that have got maybe better balance sheets, how do we assist them in, or how do we ensure that they assist our countries in raising this renewable energy profile through them maybe setting up their generating facilities for themselves or even for communities around them? Because many a times we find that there is conflict between them generating because they do have the financial muscle and maybe the utility losing them as a customer. Thank you.
Just a reminder of time there, Prof. It's 12:54, immediately after you wrap up your session. We'll be breaking for lunch before we continue with the upcoming session. Just by the way, 1 o'clock is a good time to close. Thank you.
6 minutes to go. So,
Your microphone, Prof. Prof, kindly refer to your microphone.
sorry, yeah, I was just saying we have only 6 minutes to go, and the last question goes to Mr. No, not to him.
To all the regulators.
Can you just be brief in your responses, please?
Okay, yeah. I think really the thing that we have to consider is how do we transition? The transition should be such that it's smooth. All the stakeholders, the generators, the customers, the investors, nobody loses. It should be such that we package it that way. So sometimes it might mean that it looks like things can slow because there is absence of certain things that should be in place. Thank you.
Yeah. I'd like to give myself a chance to ask a question for the benefit of all of us to say, in these discussions, it seems that our main concern is the industry, the base load. We are concerned with the sufficiency of the base load. But it occurs to me that I think the most important question for us as a region is to consider what happens in the rural areas. So the talk about off-grid solar is just at the periphery. I think the reason is that we are failing to provide the positive side of encouraging off-grid solar. We don't think beyond. We need to say that when we provide off-grid solar, there will be a multiple number of industries that will emerge from that. And as a region, I think we could go far. As a region having solar, for instance, we could say even the manufacturing of those panels would be within the region. Capacity building and all the allied industries, I think we need to talk more about that. We know that the industry now can survive with the base load provided by brown coal at the moment. But I think these technologies, sustainable renewable energies, are really meant to change the lives of people in the rural areas. Mr. Kanonda, do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, thank you. And I think you're on point. And there is a realization that perhaps we have overplayed in the space of grid connections. And I think when I went through the 5 pillars of the Mission 300, one of them is actually on distributed renewable energy. out of that realization. And it goes on further. If you look at the details, it even talks of clean cooking solutions, and that being one of the main outcomes and deliverables. So I agree with you. I think indeed there's been a realization, and we are, I don't want to say slowly, but we are moving towards the right direction right now, making sure that no one is left behind. Those on grid, rural, urban, everyone must, realize an improvement, must realize a benefit out of, the energy development here. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I think with that note, lunch was served as early as 12:20, I think, in the agenda. So we don't want to be the blocking of your lunch. So I think we'll end here. We want to congratulate and thank our panel members for a good job done. And I ask for your support in uploading them. Thank you.
Certainly, wisdom personified. That is our moderator there, Prof. Chedi Kiravu, Dean of the Faculty of Engineering from New Era College of Arts, Science and Technology, Botswana. Well, as he and his panel say goodbye to each other and prepare for their group photo, allow me to remind you that we are now continuing with our lunch break. In fact, those who have been attending sessions outside of this room are certainly taking up their lunch break. And we are encouraging you to consider returning into this room at exactly 1:30. That will be for the next session, which is opening ceremony of 6th International Off-Grid Renewable Energy Conference and Exhibitions. This session will feature welcome remarks by Mr. Francesco La Camera, as well as keynote remarks by a variety of dignitaries, including Honorable July G. Moyo from Zimbabwe, Honorable Makozo Chikote from Zambia, and Honorable Muputing from Botswana. Thank you so much for your kind attention. Do continue to give a moment of your time to the exhibitors just outside the entry. They do invite you to visit their stalls, as they have some interesting things for you to engage with. For example, if you were to visit the Beatree stall, you would have a conversation with them about e-mobility and perhaps even get a chance to get up close and personal with the electric cars they are exhibiting. Perhaps you might want to have a chat with the stall owners of the Faith at Work stall, who will tell you how they are utilizing source hydro panels to end with the result of off-grid renewable drinking water that they use from sunlight and air. Very interesting conversation you can have there with the guys at Faith at Work. The stall is one of the various stalls that are outside in the foyer, in the entry area from where you arrived this morning. Please also visit the SoTrain stall, where they have solar thermal technology, and that's what they'd like to have a chat with you about. Enjoy the drinks, visit the Prime Health Clinic if you have any health concerns. Otherwise, enjoy your lunch. We'll see you on the other side of it for the final session of today. Thank you very much.